Hey guys, Ruban here, and I made this. Okay, I'm gonna stop you right here. People just want to know how the fire is made. So let's jump straight into it. Okay, first thing, quick overview of the whole tutorial, just so you guys know where things are gonna be. This is the quick comp overview. So this was the raw render. Not super happy with how I lit this one and how it was rendered. Has a bunch of cool details, that's for sure. And that's why I was kind of rendering it so bright, because I wanted all of this to be visible. And then actually this is the original. And then this is the noise reduced one. The reason why I have the original here is because the cryptomats for some reason got screwed up after the denoising. Maybe I did something wrong, but I did a few different tests. But if I just use them from the raw and then use that as the mask, I had some additional control, like so. Not sure if I used this or not. I think I did. But next up, yeah, no correction on this guy. Just a bit of glow, a bunch of correction here. This is actually the juice. This is how the juice is done when it comes to fire. You do a blue key like so. You increase it so you really get the high intensity areas. It's gonna look like this, but we just want to get the mask. Otherwise, this is the color version. This is how the alpha looks like. Oops. And then you use that alpha in your color correct. So you can see this really helps a lot. And then a bunch of AOV tweaks. You know, this looks pretty, I would say, better. Yeah, it's better. Don't do this. And then this and that. Well, let's see. Yeah, that's why I was bringing down the fire here. And then this was bringing the bench back up. Look at that. Actually looks better than in the freaking promo. And then I added a bunch of motion blur on top. I don't think I was rendering motion blur on the smoke, even though I really don't like how the smoke looks in this case. But yeah, if you add just a touch of motion blur on top, sometimes it creates some additional details like that, even though these are artifacts. But yeah, sometimes it kind of works. Look at that. Beautiful. Okay, I'm gonna save this. And then you can see the way I work is I essentially create a node tree and then I duplicate it and tweak it. So this is one version, and this is going to be a different version that for some reason doesn't load. Hey, here we go. So A, B, right? And all of that is just in the comp. And all of that came from this pretty bad render. So there's a lot of things you can do in comp. That's why when it comes to visual effects, you have to render as fast as possible and start layering your passes and everything in comp as fast as possible. Don't get bogged down into trying to create the perfect render. You have to do quick iterations. And that's why I like Axiom, because I can do those quick iterations, but this goes across the board. This is a general advice. Just do quick iterations, put it in comp, put some glow on top, just start experimenting. And then this is the wide shot, the same thing, put it here. Looks like that. Let's see this one again. Yeah, this one is super punchy now. Love it. Takes a bit some time to load, but yeah, this looks like proper good fire. So I did a second version of this, and I essentially just denoised it, desaturated it a bit, but I really like the fire here. Not the fire. The fire is the same. I like this. I redid the smoke. So this is the smoke that I'm going to be showing you in the HIP file. Better smoke. Cool. So, and quick overview of the HIP file. This is the house. The initial plan was to burn down the whole house, and I might do that in the future. But for this, I first wanted to, and again, pro tip, okay? More pro tips. When you're doing effects, especially if you get tasked to burn down the whole house, just do a quick preset for yourself and do it on a small scale first, because then once you get the look right, you can then expand it and then populate your area or make the effect a bit bigger, you know, like burning this whole house down. So what I did was I just took the top, which kind of looks like a bench. I don't know why I peaked it, but I did. And then scatter points. I use the pyro spread. And again, this is just a quick overview. We're gonna dive deeper into each section. Pyro spread, you get a bunch of different masks with the pyro spread, and then through a solver, I created a bunch of other masks like that, and then use them as a transition for between the materials. I don't think anything's going to be visible here, but yeah, this is how the masks kind of look like. Then on the right side, we have our emitter that is then driving the fire, the house collider. We do the Axiom sim. Looks like that. Put it through a pyro look. Here it's going to look a bit chunky. Still looks pretty good. But yeah, I think in the render I changed the settings a bit, so it was a bit more skinny. And what else? Then we do VDB resample and use that as the smoke source. That's pretty much it. And then here at the bottom, I create the geolights, which I didn't use in this case, but you totally can. I showed this in the Orion workshop, but what I did there was I literally just copied points like that into the temperature. But here I would usually recommend that you don't just copy points, but that you actually advect them with the fire. It's going to be a lot less twitchy. Otherwise, if you just have this, it might appear like, yeah, it might twitch a bit, the lights. So if you advect them, you're going to get this. We add some cool amber kind of color. And then here I take the CE and copy it and mix it between the two colors. And then we export this. This is not necessary, I think, in this case, to create the p-scale. You'll see in a second. And I don't think we need to enumerate this or create the name in this case. If you watch the Orion tutorials, everything is explained there, so it's going to make sense why in some cases you do need to put your IDs into a name like that, because you do need every point needs an individual name for some cases, not in this case. So that's the basic setup, and then this is the render setup. Super easy and simple. The Orion tutorial has a much more refined setup than this. This is just a quick and dirty setup. So we bring in the bench. Here's where we bring in the fire. And then here is where we bring in the smoke. And then this is just a grid. So if I remove all of this, actually, I'm going to keep it. And then if I render this, and activate this, this is how the geolights are going to work. So if you decide to use those points as geolights, you create a light, put it to sphere, and then in the instancer, we go inside. Here's where we have those points. We bring them in. I removed a bunch of them because the more points you have, the more lights are going to be generated. And output that, and we have a bunch of lights. Look at them. Look at them lights. It's quite fast to render with all of the lights. The more lights you're going to have, the slower it's going to be. So keep that in mind. And the reason why you want to do this, because now you have control if you want to really dial this down. You know, and have control over the intensity and all of those good things that you have with the lights. Otherwise, the way I did render it was just using, so if I go back here and if I bring in my fire, under render geometry settings, you can just say, yes, you are a light source. And that will work after we apply the material. Just gonna think about it for a bit. Still thinking about it. Come on. So yeah, it's a bit slower. And this was quite slow to render just because it had a lot of voxels. And once you start, if you use your actual volume as the light, it just freaking sprays rays all over the scene. So that's why in some cases, in a lot of cases, this is the way to go. But yeah, this looked pretty good. So I did it this way this time. And that's what else? A quick overview of the material. So if I go back here, so this is our, let's go back to the, so we have it with lights, and we do need material as well. So here we go. So this, I feel like this is a cool effect that you can then use. You can use it for, well, the wood burning. You can use it on embers. If you have flakes of embers, I might do a tutorial on that later. And you can also use it on metal. You know, when sometimes you have hot metal that happens and then it slowly dies off, or, you know, when you need just that selected area of the metal to look hot, this is how you would, that's how I would approach it anyway. And it's done with in the material builder like that. So we essentially bring in a bunch of those transitions and just layer mix between a few different textures, and then doing a bunch of stuff here. Let's see if I put this into the, where are the frickin', oh, need to go here. I keep forgetting that you need to be on the karma setting, render setting to get all of your AOVs. I'm always like, where are they? So your viz, here you, that's not the one. That's not the right one. I create this viz thing so I can then check all of the different passes. So you can see if I go into the Ember map, it's gonna look like that. And this is just a checker, essentially, to see if everything is working correctly. And this is how the different maps look like, I think. Transition, Ember, yeah, these are the same. Let's put this here back. So that's the quick overview. So just so you guys know, because you can download this file and you can just play around. Now you kind of know where things are. That's how I would recommend you guys to do this, is to stop watching right now, open up the file and play around with it and see if you can figure things out, maybe recreate it, use a different part of the wood, or create your own kind of your own scene with a bunch of sticks and see if you can recreate this. But if you're not that person and you want a more detailed breakdown of everything, well, continue watching, because that's exactly what we are gonna do. I'm gonna start with the hip file and then we're gonna go into Nuke. Okay, back at the top. So we have our house. We break it down into just the top. Again, not sure why I picked this. Scatter and then temperature. You need to essentially, when you put down your scatter, you just click here. You're like, oh, I like this part. And then you select it. And for some reason, it's not freaking selecting it. Sometimes I get this issue. Not sure what it is. Yeah, it's annoying. Go here. No. 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 Select. It did select them. It's just not visualizing it. So there we go. Now it works. Probably just a weird glitch that happens. So that's how you just go away. That's how you select the points. And then you say temperature is 1. And that will tell the pyro spread where the temperature should start from. So if we look at our pyro spread, we have a bunch of different visualizers here. Let's check the temperature. So because I selected these points, that's where the temperature is going to be originating from. And it's essentially, it's a cool way to create infection spreads, or just, you know, use it as a fire emitter in this case. It's quite cool. You can do a lot of cool stuff with this. So the only things that I changed was I changed the diffusion rate to 50. So that means, you know, just go faster, because I wanted this to be a more visual, look pleasing effect than actually being super realistic. So I wanted the spread to be extremely fast. In the fuel, also increase the fuel. So gives it more fuel. So you can see now there's less of that red because it's kind of dying off. But here it's just because we're pumping a lot of fuel in it, it's going to be very, very intense. And the way it's spreading is going to be faster. And then combustion, I put this to 2. And this is all just so everything burns faster. And then I think I used a noise. Yeah, and I think I left it at the default settings. Pretty much. And the noise will just break things up a tiny bit. And if you go to your diff rate here, so from temperature, you go to diff rate, this is where you can actually visualize your noise pattern. So the noise is gonna affect where the burn is gonna be more intense or less intense. So you just kind of have to play around with these values so to get the right effect, but I left it at default and that worked great. So then you cache this. Let's go back to our temperature and you get something like this. And you can see there's a lot of variation happening here, which is cool. That's pretty much what I used as the emitter here. But to create our mask, that is not the best because it's not consistent. I want, after the mask is, after it becomes red, I just want it to be red. And this is where the solver SOP comes in. So the total burn, so in the beginning, I put total burn into CD. And if you look at the total burn, it actually is kind of like what that mask that we are creating here. So it's always gonna just stay on. These are essentially the areas that are burned. So it is gonna be consistent, which is good. But I did want to create a few of my own masks that you will see in a second. In this case, what I was doing, I was time shifting this by 3, coloring it to black. So let's go here. So I am deleting everything that is black and then offsetting this by 3. So you can see we're essentially going to get this edge once we transfer the color. And now I have this edge, which you can use for other effects as well. But with this edge, I created a red color out of it. This is our bench, and it kind of looks like this when it's kind of going through. And then in the solver, I essentially recreated that total burn, which is not super necessary in this case. Let's see. Because we kind of already had it, but I was just like, okay, I'm just going to make a few different variations of this. So this is kind of the total burn. But then on this side, it's the same thing. And again, it's very simple. But what I'm doing is I'm multiplying down the color, which will create a fall off. So the way the solver works, it's taking the previous frame and input number 2, input number 1, input number 2. Input number 2 is that mask, just that sliver that we created, and the input number 1 is our bench. And I'm just attribute transferring it to the previous frame. And then using the CD multiplied by 0.9. And what that will do is slowly cool it off. And that's how I'm driving the actual heat dispersion. And then on the right, I'm doing the same thing, but as if I remember correctly, it's 0.95. So it just stays alive for a bit longer. And I'm not sure which one I actually used, but this just gives me a few variations. If, for instance, I want this to be alive for a bit longer or cool off faster, and then we have our total burn mask here. Okay. So from there, I did what I then did is I put all of these attributes back on the bench because that's how the material is then reading them. And I'm not, yeah, so I renamed this to Ember Map. This is how we can visualize the Ember Map. This is also the Ember Map. And then, yeah, you can also create an inverse depending on what you need. So this one was looking like that. So this is the inverse. This is kind of the hot edge, which I think I called the heat ring. So the hot edge comes from, I think I redid it here. So this, put it here. This is the heat ring. And what I did here at the bottom, I attribute noise this. So we can quickly check the heat ring. Heat ring. So otherwise it's quite perfect, but if you noise it up, you get a slight variation like that, and it's just going to look more organic, like the way the heat is actually traveling. So we have our bench. Create a rest. You noise it up, and then you transfer the heat ring, which is literally just this attribute transfer the color, right? But I don't want it to be color. I wanted to store it in an attribute called the heat ring. And then you rest, you swap the rest back, and then I also computed the normals again. So that's pretty much how that was done. And all the other masks were then just attribute transferred. So for instance, we have this one, right? And this is the bench. And then you just attribute transfer it and you can view it like this. So super simple stuff. I hope I didn't over-explain all of this. I feel like I did. But it is quite simple, just creating a few masks. Then here on the right side, we essentially take our pyro spread and we take the temperature. So the temperature field that was generated, if you remember, that looks like this. Create a p-scale and then you attribute rasterize it. That's pretty much it. And we then use that as the actual emitter for our fire. What I did here on the left side is I boosted the temperature up. You need the p-scale, and then I said density is pretty much the same as temperature, but just multiplied down. So it's gonna look like this. And then I added a bunch of attribute noises to the temperature to just vary it up a bit. And I was also animating the noises, which is quite important to get more variations out of your fire, because remember, fire is always moving and changing the pattern, so it helps. So yeah, we have this. Then we create a collider out of the bench, just calling it surface. It's going to work. Otherwise, this would be collision. And then if you have velocity on your collision, you would need to call it collision vel for Axiom. And then, yeah, you plug this into Axiom and you get some fire. Sweet. Let me try to recreate this fire real fast, just so you can see how simple it actually is. And I will change this to my default workspace, just so I have them side by side, so you can, I'm gonna cheat a bit, okay? Don't worry. but I just want you to see how simple that was. So this is a new Axiom. This is the old one. And so if we go to main, the only thing I changed here was I'm gonna leave it to 0.5 for now. I added the 4 steps. I'm gonna change that at the end, just so you guys can see what it actually does. Let's actually play this. Nice. Sweet. Looks horrible. That's good. Also remember, under the outputs, we will need temperature and velocity, but when you're doing your R&D and just testing things out, you don't need them. It's going to be much faster to preview. As you can see, it's pretty much in real time to preview this for now. And it's better if you don't have any extra fields that you don't need for when you're testing. Under source, everything is at default. Didn't change a single thing. Under simulation, timescale is set to 4. So timescale will just speed everything up. It's a global multiplier for everything. So it speeds everything up. But it also, if this is set to solver, if you see the solver thing here, it means the timescale is also going to be affecting the dissipation and the cooling rate, which in this case I don't want. I want this to be set to frame step. So now it doesn't matter if we animate this up or down, it's not going to animate the dissipation or cooling rate but before it would. Okay. But you can see everything is lifting up, which is great because now our buoyancy is 4 times higher because we essentially imagine this as times 4 on the buoyancy as well. So that's great. Buoyancy, even more. Great. We add a wind. That's awesome. Look at that. Look at that wind. It's a bit shitty. So what we're going to do is if we go down to the wind tab and wind, change the direction to 0.2 and minus 0.7. Why? Because it's going to be blowing in this direction. Okay. And this was I just eyeballed it. And that's also something that helps when it comes to this fire, is that it's kind of I added a wind, and the wind is kind of helping with the intensity and the directionality of the fire. Otherwise it would just be going up, which is, that's fair. Some fire would just go up, but it really helps if you add wind. Even when you're doing smoke sims or explosions, just try to add some wind and see how that goes. But usually it's better. Enable turbulence on the wind. Look at that. Even better. So this is swirl size set to 1. Maybe actually it was okay if we just left it at 0.4. And if you increase the strength, you'll see what that do. Yeah, good for us. I think 0.5 actually might be better. And go back to 1. Great. Good wind. Have some good wind. Go up. What do we need? We need, let's add 2 disturbances. It's going to be absolute chaos. Great. Let's bring them down to 0.3 and 0.1. Still chaos. Don't worry. It's all good. It's all good. Let's go back to the disturbances and see what we had here. So this is currently connected to the division size. I'm like, no, I'll change this the way I want. So this was at 0.3, and then this one was 0.06, which is great. So usually this one, I set it to my original division size, which in this case is 0.03, okay? And then the second one, I doubled the size. So let's see now. Better. Still too much disturbance, 100%. So there's 2 things you can do here. The first one is you multiply this down. So this is what I like to do. I just create a multiplier here and multiply this all down. So we have less disturbance and now it doesn't look so crazy. But the other way of dealing with this, if we go back to 1 and 1, and it's going to be extreme, is to increase the substeps. And honestly, for fire, especially if it's fast moving fire, we do want substeps. Now it's going to be a bit slower because this is now calculating in between it's going to do 4 substeps per frame. So you have your frame, it's going to do 4 in between calculations on this. And that will just make things way more stable when it comes to disturbances because it has more time to calculate it. And also the collisions are going to be more clear. And if you have any bending happening, if you're, let's go back to 1 and let's go, great, 8. I'm going to turn off this because I just wanted to make a point. But in some cases, sometimes you can see kind of some bending happening here, right? And that's because our fire is moving quite fast. And you fix that by adding substeps. In most cases, that's going to fix it. But we also want substeps here because our fire, and then turn on disturbance, turn on our turbulence, which I have no idea what it was. It was 0.02. Great, 0.02. And then also confinement. Confinement is just going to add some small details to the velocity field. So we like that. We like the small details in the velocity field when it comes to fire. And that's it. These are all the settings that I changed. And that's the fire. So then do this and you're like, yep, cached it, super done. It's pretty much done. Well, not really. This is great, but we do need our temperature velocity. So now the caching is going to be a bit slower because we're caching more fields. Still quite fast. And also that's not the final resolution that we want, because when it comes to fire, we want it to be really crispy. So this is great. And if your shot is like this, then you're in luck, because then this is going to be good enough. But our fire was freaking close, man. Look at that. Look at it. Look at that fire. Fire needs to be crisp. Needs to be high res. So this fire was actually like, I don't know, 65 million. That's like a lot. So what you need to do is go to less. So Jesus Christ, 0.09. Oof. I don't know, 0.01 maybe. But yeah, I went super low, and that's going to make the simulation time a bit longer, but it's still going to be between, on my 3090, it was still between 3 to 5 minutes on the super high res. But yeah, it depends what you need. Sometimes you need 0.009. Who knows? I don't. But yeah, you can see it gets slower the more fire it starts emitting. Yeah, anyway, I'm gonna leave it at that. But yeah, we're gonna have more voxels. Yeah, look at them voxels. And the more voxels you have, you can see the look is gonna change a bit, just because now the disturbance has more data to work with, and it's gonna change the look of your sim. So that's just something that happens when you start adding more data, right? But this is our original sim. Well, and then let's go back to what was it? Vertical 3? Vertical 2. Yes, I like this one. And then pyro look. I think I talked about this before, but on the fire, just grade this. Just do this. Look, do that. And then take your source range here and be like, be the same, but plus 0.03. And that will give you a fiery look. Also, smoke. I did talk about this on the big fire tutorial, but add some smoke and it's going to be cool. Trust me. It's going to add this crispiness to it, like so, but it will also add some black smoke with the fire. We are simulating the smoke separately, but this will help. It's going to be cool. So that's that. And then VDB resample, you resample it. So it's fast. And now we only have the temperature here. And we still use our collider. We merge them and then we do the smoke. Let's see. I'm going to turn this fella is off. This fella, I'm going to turn it on. Let's see, smoke. I think I went quite high res, mid high res with the smoke, but I kind of liked how it looked, so that was great. Good smoke. So you cache that out. Nothing special here. Just check the settings. You know, one disturbance, one turbulence. That's what I do. That's all you need to do in most cases when it comes to 90% of all sims. Just turn this on, and then it will mostly just work. And then here I am outputting temperature, and for the velocity, I'm setting this to pull. Honestly, I think this could be a bit higher when it comes to velocity. Yeah, I think the velocity was a bit too low. But usually when I'm using my fire temperature to also the velocity. When I'm using the temperature, density, and velocity coming from the fire, I set the velocity to pull. In most cases, that was giving me the best results. If you set this to add, it's going to start pushing it away too fast. And it's going to become a bit stringy in these areas. So pull is usually a good in between. That is still going to give it that kick that you need, but it's not going to become too stringy and it's not going to be pushing it too much. Yeah, that's all I have to say about that. Good smoke. And then what we do on the smoke is we do need the scatter field. And why? Because I'm faking the volume illumination. This is super slow to render otherwise. And I was kind of rendering it, but this will give us a good fakeness to it. So yeah, it helps. And that's our smoke. And here is then our fire. The geolights. That's, like I said, it's up to you if you want to use them. What I did was I took the low res fire, scattered points. Look at them, points scattered. And then popnet, go inside. What we do is on the second input, you bring the low res velocity. That's what we need. See that? Second. Velocity scale 3. Update position, put it to trace. Look at that. Beautiful. These are our point lights. This is our point cloud that we then convert into lights and illuminate, and that can then illuminate our whole area and everything. A trick, see that? Some of them get stuck, not what we want. So you can just do a volume sample based on the density. And if the density is too low, remove that point. See that? Gets rid of them. Usually works. It's a hack, honestly, but it's gonna, if anything is, the reason why those points get stuck is because there's nothing here anymore to push them around. They're kind of outside of our volume. And they just stop, and that they stop because we're using the update position. So this is just like, if you're outside, you're done. Not in the sim anymore. And then add some CD. Look beautiful. They look like embers. I don't know why I didn't render embers here, because this would could totally work, but I didn't. So you can do a better job than me and actually render some embers. Cache this out. This is our fire. And on the fire, we have the CE attribute coming from the bake emission volume. And then we do attribute from volume. We get this. This is important because our lights are gonna inherit the color. So it's important, but I didn't like how all of these were kind of black. So I was like, I kind of like these colors. So I just did a mix between the two using the lerp function. And then cache that out. Cool. Like I said before, this is not needed. Check out the Orion tutorial and you will understand why sometimes you need this. But this is not needed in this case because I was literally using this cache and not any of this. So good. That's it. That's the main setup. Let's jump into Solaris. Oof. So I think the majority of this, I'm just gonna hopefully, I'm gonna be explaining, I guess, the material for the wood burning. Because everything else is quite simple. Look at that beautiful material. It's beautiful. How do I make this a bit brighter? Yep, look at it. It's pretty cool. I like it. Gonna go back a bit. Oof. Hot. Yeah, so we bring in our wood, fire, our smoke. Import path prefix. This is good. You kind of want to do that because, damn it. Let's quickly get the inspector. Mr. Inspector here. I don't need this. Put this down. Put this down. Okay. This dot slash smoke. Why? Because it's gonna make a slash smoke thing here. If you don't do this, you know, it's just gonna use the OS, which is the SOP import 3, and then you're like, what is SOP import 3? I have no idea. So don't do that. Smoke. Good. That works. Was it uppercase smoke? It was not. It was lowercase. Yeah, that's a good eye. Have a good eye. So yeah, you bring all of your stuff in. I'm gonna disable this, and for now, I kind of want to just talk through the shader that you need for this to look cool. So material library, material builder, this is where the fun stuff happens. So UV coordinates, this is an UV transform. This is so I was kind of rotating the textures a bit and you can play around with the scaling. So for instance, if I put this to 0.2, now something should have changed. Oh, that's not good. Totally did. Anyway. Okay, so yeah, that just a bit of troubleshooting, but yeah, this will scale up all of these textures. You can see now they're way big, and now they're actually going to go back to their proper size. And if I go super tiny, now this will be even smaller like that. So that's why you need this. Put it back to 1 because 1 was working fine. So we have two principal shaders here. The first one, they're both using, I just copied it. As you can see, this is 0 and this is 1. The one is using a mega scan that looks like this. And the bottom one is using, I think I literally just got this from the web. I Googled it and I got this material. Super, just like burned kind of wood, I think done in Substance Designer. And then that's it. Those are the two materials. And then layer mixing between the two with a transitional burn. Now, the best way to see this is if you create a viz node, and you can now see how that is going to be transitioning between. The way you do that is if you go to your mantra and you go to image output, you can go at the bottom, extra render vars, and you just type it like that, bottom top. I also did the crypto materials, just turn everything on. This is our viz. And yeah, this is how you then can see your viz here as well. So this is going to blend between the two materials. And not sure I'll use this one. And then I also blend it between, because this layer contains everything, you know, layer, unpack. It contains a lot of the information. It also has the displacement information. So if your materials have displacement, when you can also blend them and then displacement export, and that will then work as it's gonna take the displacement into consideration as well, which is beautiful, because without it, it just looks super flat. And then everything at the bottom is just this. This is the actual fire. No, not the F. Layer. Right. So again, just mixing between the two materials, and mixing them between this Ember map. If we go to our Ember map, to the viz area, this is how it looks like. So this one slowly fades away as we go. So this is going to be all hot, and then slowly it's going to die off, and we're going to start seeing the dark material here again. So only the hot area is visible here. This material is a texture, so it's not a material. It's the same texture. It's the same PBR burned texture, like this one. The only thing I changed here was I brighten it up in Photoshop. And then I'm also adding some noise. Where's our viz? Mr. Viz, we need you. Visit. So this is just using the surface globals, position, basic turbulence noise, fitting it, absoluting it for some reason. Doesn't do anything. I think it was doing if I'm not fitting. No, actually, so it depends on the noise. I think before I was using an alligator noise. So yeah, if you play around with the values, put this to sparse convolution, change the values here. So essentially refitting the values a bit. And what absolute will do is anything that goes negative is going to become positive again. So now you get these more fiery shapes, but I wasn't too happy with them, so I just ignored it. So I went to Perlin and I did this, and I got this, which was completely fine. So you add them together and you get this. So some areas are darker and some areas are brighter, just to get more variation. And then we powered it up to get more contrast. The first ramp is a contrast ramp again, so that's what we get. You control these ramps then outside of here. So this is that ramp called ramp. Don't do that. Don't just call things ramp. Just call them what they are, okay? And then the second one is fire, which is you take those grayscale values and you put them through a color ramp and you get this. Look, beautiful. So the hot values, the bright areas are going to be brighter and the dark areas are going to be darker. That's great. That's exactly what we need. Multiply it up. Woo! Need to go back to one. So we get this, which looks pretty good. And then I took the heat ring, which looks like that. So, well, a few words on the heat ring. So let's go back a bit. So here's our heat ring. It looks like that. So this is just, this area is white. And yeah, I didn't multiply it. If we multiply this now, if we take, so this is our ember map, right? This is our material. If we multiply them, let's remove this for now. It's going to take away that part, which is great. We don't want that part. We just want this to be affecting just the area based on the ember map. That's great. But now I just want to add that heat ring. I just want this area to be even more hot. So if I add this in as a multiplier, you can see it's going to brighten it up. So we can put this 3. It's going to be even more hot. That's awesome. That's great. But you need to do, in order for that to work, we need to put this into this math constant. Why? Because if you understand the basics of multiplication, if we don't do this, then all this is black. And if we multiply this now, basically our material is only going to be visible here. If we add 1 to this, then everything here, everything around it is 1. So 1 multiplied by 1 is still going to be 1. So it's not going to be affecting anything. It's only going to be multiplying up these areas because that's actually what's being multiplied up. Okay, hope that makes sense. And now we get this. Without it, it just multiplies everything down. With it, it's just going to add that part. Sweet. Fire mask burn. So I think fire mask burn. So this is just a mask. And when you're rendering this out, you can then use this in comp to brighten this up, specifically just this mask. That's why it's recommended that you export it. And then what we do is we layer pack this, because if you remember, this was not coming from a principal shader like this with a layer. So we're just using a texture essentially. And then when you layer pack it, you're just using in this case, I was using the emission, but I'm pretty sure I could use, well, no, this is the emission. Yeah, C. Yeah, that's right. Yeah, emission. That's good. So, and also it contains the colors. So when you layer pack this and layer mix it with everything else, you get all of your existing materials, all of your, all of the mixing we did before, plus another mix on top. We don't need to worry about the displacement map on this. This is essentially just acting as another layer on top of everything. And yeah, it works. You layer it on top, you use the ember map, and you get this. And that's how that material is made. And then you start blasting on fire. Sweet. It's a bit bright, so I'm gonna put this to 3, which I think it was when I was rendering it. So you can see it's gonna get a bit slow on us here. Yeah. And I think the fire in this case was a bit too bright, so go to the fire, just put this to 1, just cool it down a bit. And here I was using smoke. So without smoke, it's gonna look like this. If you remember in the initial renders, when I was doing this, I was not using the black smoke. So it's completely optional. But when I was doing it the second time, I was using the dark smoke. And it kind of looks cool when you can see here, when this is kind of still burning, it's still emitting smoke, but it's emitting that black smoke now. So it just adds another layer of variation, and not sure if it's super realistic, but it looks pretty cool when we're still emitting some of that black smoke on top. So that's why you need to test it out. Maybe some of the black smoke would be cool here as well. Yeah, The only problem is if when you're doing fire like this, if you're comping it against a bright background, it might lose the crispiness. That's why smoke is going to help you there quite a lot, and you can obviously reduce the smoke down. So you will still get the crispiness, just a tiny bit of smoke, but the crispiness is what we're after. And also it gets slower to render. And then if you think this was slow, let's add the smoke on top. Rah, cool, looks pretty good. So all of this illumination some of it is happening because we are using this as a light. So if I set this to no, you can see we lose a lot of that. But the smoke, if we turn off our fire, we'll have this illumination happening on the inside. And that is because on the smoke, we are using that scatter field. No masking, we don't need the masking because it's just acting as a light. In this case, we just want it to be a soft inside glow happening from the fire. So pretty much it. And yeah, then you press render and wait a few hours for this to go out. I will start transferring everything to XPU because this is just ungodly slow for stuff like that. But XPU has some limitations as it is right now with 19.5. But I think in the future, those limitations are going to go away. So it's going to make me happy. Let's go back to 15 just so something gets rendered. And I'm sure, yeah. So volume limit is also an important factor here. It's set to 0 because I just wanted this to be super fast to render. Let's put the fuse to 0. Maybe it's going to be faster. Doesn't go any faster really. But I'm going to remove the fire for a second and put this to 3. So you will see the smoke is gonna change quite a lot because now we're gonna get the volumetric rays happening in the smoke. So this only do this if you have a really good CPU or like a farm, but in a lot of cases this will make everything look quite much more realistic. And the way the light is being dispersed and bouncing inside of the volume is gonna be a lot better, but it becomes more expensive to render. So, but you can see if I put this down to 0, the smoke is going to get much darker because now it's not bouncing anything. And let's turn on the light, the firelight, bam. But let's also try if we put this to no and be like, bam, see what happens. Holy moly. So that's super bright. We don't want it to be that bright. We're already super low on intensity, so. And maybe we put this to 3, 0, or 5. Go back a bit. Yeah, we need this to be the active radius to be bigger. But yeah, you then just have to play with this. And also our spheres are quite big, so we would go inside. Let's see. And change the p-scale. Or do a random p-scale, might help as well. Yeah, so then you have to play around with the p-scale and your active radius and all of that, and also the intensity here. And put this, yes. Hey, look at that. Now extra slow, but it's gonna look cool. The light bouncing is gonna be pretty cool. Anyway, this was just like an experimental thing. If you want to include everything, but you can see it's kind of chugging. But that's how you would get some cool realism out of this. And for the comp, if we do a quick overview of the comp as well. So this is the denoised version, which is if you go here and to output, nope, images, comp, this is how it's done. You bring it in, AI denoise, put it to 1 or like maybe something less, and just denoise all of the passes. I think by default, it doesn't denoise everything. So you just need to go in and say everything. But the cryptomats were broken after the denoising, so I just have to bring them in separately, and that worked completely fine. Like so. Shuffle out just the burn mask and just add some exponential glow on top. Maybe it would be cool to have one that's a lot bigger like that, and then merge these two together first and do it as a either plus or a screen. Let's see. Kind of like plus is more intense because it's adding it. Screen is not going to add it. We'll leave it to screen for now. Just add a bit of that glow. Don't overdo the glow. This is nothing. A bit of color correction, bringing everything down. Create a blue key. Blue keyer. So I get green, red, blue was fine. I needed like these tiny details. Color connected up. Shuffle out just the direct emission, which looks like that. And then otherwise, because I want this, I want all of these nice hotspots, but I don't want to bring in any of the environment. And I would just mask it out like that. And then color correction. Bring that up, just literally boosting it. And desaturation, just a bit, goes a long way. See that? Adds quite a lot. Just a tiny bit. Color correct. You could, in this case, was just using this AOV. I don't know what this is called. Grade AOV, I guess. So you can then use all of your AOVs and color correct them here. You can see the name Grade AOV by Josh. It's quite cool. Helps a lot. But in this case, I don't think it's necessary. So yeah, bring everything down. Radial mask for the vignette. I usually don't do vignettes, but in this case it was fine. And then motion blur on top. And like I said before, this is how I work. Create the tree. And you can then change and do variations. Because I kind of like this one, right? I was like, oh, this is looking pretty good. And then I went to the bottom one. I was like, oh my God, this is way better. And so I would maybe copy this and do like another variation. So that's how I usually work. I'm gonna give you this. I'm gonna probably try to give you one of the renders, probably this one, so you can play around on your own. I'm gonna give you the hip file, and I'm gonna give you this freaking house, so you can burn it down. Burn the whole house down, okay? Don't burn it, burn just the top. Burn the whole thing. Okay, I think that's it, guys. I hope you enjoyed this fire tutorial. That's how I would approach photoreal fire. You can see there's not a lot to it. There's a lot of secondary elements that kind of go into play here, not just the fire itself. Axiom kind of takes care of the photorealism when it comes to fire. So you don't have to do a lot of work there, but it's all the other elements And I think I'll do a separate tutorial just how to make some cool, sexy embers. You can also look at the Big Fire tutorial that I did. I included the render, the embers setup there, but I think we can do some nice flaky embers as well. Anyway, that's it. Keep burning down the house, everybody, and see you soon. Bye.